Imagine a cold night in a remote village in North Sumatra where thick fog enveloped the dark rubber plantation. I am Pak Budi, a 45-year-old rubber tapper who has been doing this routine for many years. Every early morning, around 2 o'clock, I had to wake up and walk alone through the stony path to the plantation, carrying a bucket and the tapping knife. My house is simple, made of wood and zinc, accompanied by my wife, Bu Siti, and our loyal village dog, Sibilang, a skinny black and white dog, but loyal, who always slept on the front porch like an unseen guardian. That morning, as usual, I woke up with sleepy eyes. The damp air smelling of wet earth seeped in through the window cracks. I drank a cup of bitter black coffee, then prepared to go out. Sibilang, who usually only yawned and wagged his tail when I left, suddenly acted strangely. He got up from his sleeping spot, clung to my leg, and began to bark softly but firmly. Not a playful bark, but a warning sound that made the hairs on my neck stand up. His eyes stared intensely towards the path leading to the plantation, as if something dangerous was there. I tried to dismiss it. "That's enough, Belang. Be quiet. I have to work." But he wouldn't budge. He growled, tugged at my trousers, and kept barking louder. Finally, feeling uneasy, I gave in and let him follow me. "All right, just come along then," I muttered, grabbing my old dim flashlight. We walked in a chilling silence. The sounds of night insects and the wind rustling through the rubber leaves were our only companions. The fog grew thicker, limiting my visibility to just a few meters ahead. Sibilang walked beside me, but suddenly he stopped short. The fur on his nape bristled, and he began to bark hysterically towards the bushes at the side of the path. I felt my heart pounding. "What is it, Belang?" I whispered, shining my flashlight in the direction he was pointing. In the flickering, shaky beam of the flashlight, I saw them. Two bright yellow dots glowing from behind the dense foliage, like a pair of eyes watching us. The eyes were large, not an animal's eyes or a cat's. They were too large, too human-like, but not human. They didn't blink, just stared at us coldly, as if waiting for the right moment to approach. Cold sweat drenched my body despite the cool night air. I remembered old stories from neighbors about forest creatures that often stalked lone workers in the rubber plantations. They said it could be a kuntilanak or something worse, hungry for the solitude of the night. Sibilang kept growling, pulling me back, his barks breaking the silence like screams for help. I dared not think too much. With trembling hands, I turned off the flashlight and turned around, running as fast as I could back to the house. Sibilang chased me, occasionally glancing back while growling, as if to make sure it wasn't following. When we finally reached the porch of the house, the door tightly locked, and Bu Siti woke up from the commotion. I collapsed onto the floor, my breath heaving. Sibilang immediately curled up at my feet, quiet now, but his eyes were still watchful. The next morning, I didn't go to the plantation. I told Bu Siti, and she just shook her head. "Maybe it was just your imagination, Mas." But I knew it was real. Since then, Sibilang never let me go out alone in the dead of night again. He had saved me from something I didn't want to know, and I was grateful, because without his loyal barks, I might never have come home that night. I am Risa, a medical student in Bandung. I'm not really superstitious. I rely more on logic and science. But this experience changed my perspective forever. At that time, my group mates and I were working on a colonial architecture research project. We chose an old Dutch colonial hospital that had been abandoned for decades, located quite remotely from the city's bustle. Rumors of its haunting were common knowledge, but we dismissed them as part of intriguing local myths. It's a bad habit of mine, but I often bring Milky, my beloved white poodle, wherever I go. Milky is a cheerful, obedient, and never fussy dog. She's like my shadow. That day, Milky also came along. As we entered the complex of the old hospital building, mostly ruined and overgrown with tall weeds and towering trees, the atmosphere immediately felt different. The air became cold, damp, and there was a pungent, stale smell that stung my nostrils. Milky, usually so cheerful and bouncy, suddenly became quiet. Her tail tucked between her legs, she walked closely by my side, occasionally letting out a low growl towards dark, empty corners. I ignored it, thinking she was just scared by the quiet and unfamiliar environment. "Milky, calm down," I whispered, stroking her head. We started photographing every angle of the crumbling building and noting architectural details. We moved from one room to another, passing through long corridors filled with rubble. Finally, we arrived at a large room, believed to have once been the operating theater. This is where it all began. The air in that room felt much colder, chilling to the bone. A faint, pungent odor, like rust mixed with medicine, was strong. Suddenly, Milky barked. Not an ordinary bark, but a very loud, hysterical, and fearful bark. She ran to a dark corner of the room, scratching at the floor and looking up at the wall as if there was something there invisible to our eyes. I tried to call her. "Milky, what's wrong? Stop!" But she didn't listen to me. Her barking grew more intense, accompanied by a low growl I had never heard from her before. Then I heard it. A whisper. Very soft, almost inaudible, but incredibly clear in my ears. "Go! Go!" The sound was like a hiss coming from the same direction Milky was barking. The hairs on my neck stood on end, from my nape down to my arms. My friends exchanged glances, their faces pale. "Did you hear that?" one of them asked with a trembling voice. They all nodded. Milky, as if hearing the whisper more clearly than us, barked even more hysterically, jumping up and down as if trying to drive away something unseen. Suddenly, an old, broken, and empty flower pot, which had been sitting silently on the windowsill, fell with a loud shattering sound. There was no wind, nothing touched it. It felt as if an invisible force had knocked it down. Panic overwhelmed us. Without a second thought, we all ran helter-skelter out of that room, through the long corridors, no longer caring about the assignment or anything else. Milky, who had been hysterical, immediately quieted down once we were out of the room and followed closely behind me at full speed. We didn't stop running until we reached the complex gate, where the afternoon sunlight felt warm and calming. After we managed to get out of the old hospital area, Milky returned to normal. She wagged her tail and looked at me with her usual cheerful face. I hugged her tightly, incredibly grateful. I was convinced that without Milky's loud warning and furious reaction that sent us into a panic, we might have lingered in that haunted room, trying to figure out the source of the whispers and sounds. And who knows what would have happened if we had stayed. My dog, Milky, had saved us from an unseen disturbance, whatever it was. I am Pa Arman, a family man who had just moved into a new housing complex on the outskirts of Jakarta. This complex was still very new, so many houses were empty and unoccupied, and the atmosphere felt quiet, especially at night. For the safety of my family, and also as a companion in this sometimes too quiet house, I kept a large Rottweiler named Rocky. Rocky looked fierce with his muscular body, but he was very loyal to me and my wife and children. He was part of the family. That night, as usual, we were all fast asleep. It was around 1 in the morning when the whole complex was typically deep in the darkness of slumber. I woke up, not because of an alarm clock, but because of Rocky's incessant barking from the backyard. It wasn't his usual bark when he saw a cat or an insect. This was an angry, hoarse, and alarming bark, a sound I knew well as a signal of danger. My heart immediately began to pound. Something was wrong. I quickly got out of bed, trying not to make any noise so as not to wake my wife and children. With careful steps, I crept towards the bedroom window that overlooked the backyard. Peeking through the curtain, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Rocky was still barking non-stop, the fur on his nape bristling, and he was pacing near the back fence, his eyes fixed on a corner, as if an invisible enemy was there. I turned on the backyard light. Instantly, the light illuminated the area, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Two men in dark jackets, with hats covering part of their faces, had just jumped over my fence from the outside. The two men seemed shocked to see the large Rocky, ready to pounce. They hadn't expected such a large dog in a house that still looked new and quiet. Without hesitation, Rocky lunged towards one of the men, growling with a deep sound. The man who was trying to get in through the back door was startled and fell. Seeing a dog as large and aggressive as Rocky, the two men didn't think twice. They immediately jumped back over the fence and ran headlong away from Pa Arman's house, disappearing into the night. Rocky continued to bark until I opened the back door and hugged him. The next morning, I found clear footprints in the dirt near the back fence and some damage to the kitchen door lock, indicating that the intruders had indeed tried to get in. I felt incredibly grateful. Without Rocky's vigilance and his courage in confronting two armed intruders, who knows what would have happened to my family that night? Perhaps we would have lost valuable belongings, or worse, our safety would have been jeopardized. Rocky, the loyal guard, had saved the day.